Hi everyone, this is episode 15 of the Fat Doctor podcast, season 5. I am your host, Dr. Asha Lamy. It is Wednesday, the 12th, I believe, of April. It might not be, but I believe it is. I'm recording this podcast a couple of weeks in the past. And today I am going to be tackling a subject that is very dear to my heart at the moment, especially about whether or not health defines our worth. We're going to be talking about healthism. We're going to be talking about moralism, where it all began, where we're at, and where we should be heading to. And I have been talking about health. If you go back to the beginning of this season of the podcast, I have been talking about health. How do we define health? I think that was episode 2. And since then, I've been talking on and off. I should really be able to tell you all the other things that I've done, but you need to look back, I guess, and see for yourself. In season 2 of the Fat Doctor podcast, I spent an entire season talking about health and what is health and how do we define it, etc., and healthism. And I guess I'm kind of carrying that on, and I will continue to carry it on because I think that our health beliefs, our ideas surrounding our physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, etc. health were sort of created in this crucible of health and wellness culture. And so I think a lot of us are very confused about what is health, what isn't health. And I will continue to challenge that so long as I'm doing this podcast. I just don't think that I can ever stop, really. Historically, our health has been linked to our morality for quite some time. And when we begin to pick this apart, all of the usual suspects begin to appear. There are layers upon layers of them. To start with, this capitalism, because health is commodified, health is packaged and sold to you in all sorts of different formats. This is what healthy looks like. This is what healthy does. And it will cost you $39.99 plus tax. That's basically how we have begun to view health. And it's been going on for quite some time. But we can go back further. We find, in fact, if we go back far enough, we find, unsurprisingly, good old-fashioned racism, especially anti-Black racism, colonialism, white supremacy. Lots of people have written on this. Lots of people have spoken about this. I'm not here to speak over them. I thoroughly recommend Dr. Sabrina String's Freeing the Black Body and Deshaun Harrison's Belly of the Beast. These are 2 books that really helped me understand how anti-Black racism really is at the very roots, at the very core, the very foundations of healthism, wellness culture, moralism, etc., etc. And there's more to it, of course. There's patriarchal bullshit. Man is superior to woman. And alongside that, we have a lot of classism, because we are taught that the so-called health behaviors that are very important to our health, that's something that we see more in the kind of higher classes and the lower classes, the working class. Fewer sort of riskier health behaviors, very risky. And it's very much class. It's also, you should do this for your health. Oh, nice. Except for if you have to work shifts, or you are living below the poverty line, or all of these things. Then we go the other way around. Ultra processed food, junk food, not exercising, not going outside, blah 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 blah, sedentary lifestyle, blah 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 blah. Yeah, there's a lot of classist bullshit in there as well. There's also a lot of ableism, because of course health is, when we talk about health, we're talking about sort of cardiovascular health, we're talking about fitness, we're talking about mobility, we're talking about functioning and productivity and provide and having a role in society and all this stuff. This is again ableist bullshit once again. And so loads and loads of layers, and I've talked about them already, and I will continue to talk about them, so I don't want to dwell on them, but I just wanted to point them out to you. And when you think about it, you hear this stuff all the time. At least you have your health. Yeah, Oh, well, at least you have your health. Because if you don't have your health, well, I don't know what you're less than. Um, that person really let themselves go. Often talking about their weight, but actually could just be talking about somebody in general. Look at them, they really let themselves go, which is a moral failing, isn't it? Letting themselves go. But ooh, look at that person. They look so healthy. Again, there's coded compliment for weight loss often. But even if it wasn't, even if it was just, look at you, look so healthy. Oh, nice. Right? Because that's important. Being healthy is important. You have your health, you look so healthy. And and so what? What does that say about me? Honestly, I'm asking, what does it say about me? Because for the longest time, I was able to walk through this earth thinking I'm fat and I'm trans and I am, and I'm queer and I'm this and I'm that, but I'm healthy. And then I stopped being healthy. All of a sudden, I have a chronic illness that I'll never be able to get rid of. Not a chronic illness, but the fat illness that is diabetes. And then I developed a problem with my shoulder, and um, now I'm in a lot of pain. And there's one thing I can tell you about pain, and it's not just with pain, but pain is a really good example of this. When one part of you hurts, all of you hurts. When one part of your body stops working properly, the rest of your body tries to compensate, and over time becomes painful too. Just because of the way that I'm sleeping, the way that I'm unable to perform activities of daily living because of my shoulder, all of a sudden, my back, my hips, my other shoulder, my wrist, all of them. I mean, everything was fine until one started hurting. Now everything hurts. And let me tell you, this has not been great for my mental health, nor has it been great for my sense of self-worth. And also, I'm not able to go out and do as much as I used to be able to do. And as a result, I don't get to enjoy life as much as I used to. So that's tanking my mood. It's also making me a lot more isolated than before. Social isolation's a bit of a bitch, really. And then that's impacting my energy levels. I'm exhausted all the time, unsurprisingly. Not just because I'm waking up in the night with pain, but just because this is dragging on and on. I can't look back and remember a time now when I was able to sleep through the night, when I was able to move without pain. Now, actually, it's only been a few months, but it feels like it's happened for so long that I can't remember when it wasn't like that. I also have no idea how long it's going to last. It might last forever. It probably won't because of the condition that it is, but I feel right now, I feel really low. I'm in a valley. It's really not great. And I'm fortunate that I have a condition that is, by its very nature, transient. It doesn't last forever. What if you've got a condition that lasts forever, that isn't fixable? What if you're born with that condition? Then what? Like, it's not fun. It's really not. And then to be told, in addition to all this crap, well, actually, you're just simply not good enough now. Like, you have less value to society because of your health status, because you can't contribute, you aren't as productive, you're more of a burden, you require, I don't know, welfare or support, you're dragging us down, you aren't paying as much taxes, all of this shit that is rooted is, and as I said, ableism and white supremacy and racism and capitalism and all that shit, all the things we know is crap, but it's such a, like, talk about salt on a wound. Talk about the cherry on a shit Sunday. I mean, really, the last thing you want to be told is because of a condition that you have no control over. Now, not only are you struggling physically and emotionally and mentally and socially and energetically, but in addition to that, you no longer have any value in society. And also says who? Because I really want to question that for a minute. It says who I don't have any value in society. Like, who actually said, who says I can't contribute? There is this idea that if you are not productive, if you are not if you are not contributing financially, well, in today's capitalist world, financially, if you're not contributing, you are less than. Says who? Do you need me to tell you how many artists and scientists and community leaders are living with illness and disability? How many historical figures have a history of illness and disability? There are so many different ways to contribute to society beyond these stupid productivity metrics that we use. And yet, and yet, you have this kind of belief that if you're not healthy, you're of less value to society. And what does that do? That causes us to feel deeply ashamed, right? So we get all of this internalized shame and also a lot of anxiety because if you because you know you can't control your health, and all of a sudden you have this chronic illness, and so there's all this anxiety, there's the shame, and then there's anxiety, and then there is the self-worth is tied very much to you sort of, I guess, your health metrics. Is that the word that I would use? From like my point of view as a diabetic, when my A1C is good, my self-worth is high. When my A1C is bad, my self-worth is low. But guess what? I have very little control over my fucking A1C. So I don't get to control my self-worth anymore. It is determined by a blood test, by a number on a screen, and a doctor who gives me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, who gives me a lecture or a pat on the back. And there's no rhyme nor reason to it. I can't even say, oh yeah, if I do this, then this will happen. I don't know. I have no idea, hence the anxiety. There's all this stigma and isolation and even healthcare access, right? The sicker you are, the less you are able to access healthcare, which is ridiculous. Just like it's awful. The sickest deserve the best healthcare, and that they get the worst healthcare. The chronically sick are the ones who are most impacted by this. So I mean, we really got to ask ourselves, what the fuck is going on? This isn't right. Because if you think about it, we all rely on each other, regardless of our health status. Think of all the people in your life that you don't notice, but without them, you couldn't survive. There was this whole experiment, and it was something I can't remember now, but it was something to do with refuse collectors and how, like, when they go on strike, the world comes to a halt, screeches to a halt. We cannot survive without refuse collectors. And yet, how often do we turn around and go, oh, thank God for the refuse? What would we do without the refuse collectors? I do, actually, because every time my bin fills up, I'm like, oh, it's almost bin day. But that's a thing. You probably, if you live outside the UK, you probably don't know what bin day means, but it's the day that they come and collect, Anyway, you got it. You understood. You're smart people. But we all depend on each other. It's not just certain people. When the lockdown happened and there was everyone stayed at home except for what were we called, like essential workers. That's right, essential workers. And I always felt really sad about that because I was like, well, actually, everybody is an essential worker. It's not some more essential than others. But there was this kind of special status given for a short period of time to healthcare workers and first responders and stuff. And hey, don't get me wrong, healthcare workers, first responders, teachers, the people putting groceries on tables, these are all very important people, but everybody is equally of value. You don't have to have one of those jobs to be important. The world will come to an end if an entire group of people cease to exist. I truly believe it. We need each other. So this idea that our, health status somehow determines whether or not we are worthy of whatever is just not okay. And interestingly enough, at the time of recording this podcast, there was an article that I found in The Guardian. It just so happened. And I had posted an Instagram post that basically said, I don't owe you my health, because I was getting ready for this podcast. And then a couple of days later, this article came out. And I was like, oh, good God. So this is what I was talking about. And the article was written by a woman named Sarah Phillips. I have no idea who she is, nor do I want to. It was in The Guardian, in the UK Guardian. It says, plot twist, I'm still a fat person. Meet the people proving you can be fit at any size. Now, I saw a whole bunch of faces that I recognised. There were fat people in front of The Guardian. Oh my gosh, talking about how you can be fit at any size. This very rarely happens, and it was very exciting. Representation matters, people. And we all got excited when we saw this. And I was like, I know that person. I know, I follow that person. And this is what is the article. I don't know. Is it called the byline or it's not the tagline. The little bit under the article, the title is a bit subheading. No, maybe not. In the age of Ozempic and extreme dieting, slimness is still prized over any other body shape. True so. But you don't have to shrink your frame in order to be powerful, supple, and healthy. True story. In order to be powerful, supple, and healthy, you do not need to shrink your frame. But also, you don't have to be powerful, supple, or healthy, or fit to be a worthy human being. And this article had some real gems in it. People like Becky Scott. It started with Becky, who is a a fat fitness instructor and has a master's in something related to sports, not sports science. And I don't want to say because I really should have known this and done my research, but he was both well learned and has lived experience of fatness and is a fitness instructor. And she was sharing all this stuff, and it was like, no one talks about this stuff. It was really good to see. As I said, representation is really important. And Becky talks about things like, I'll quote here. Health outcomes can be improved through exercise regardless of the size of our body. So it is about focusing on other health and well-being goals like getting outside, overcoming isolation and improving mental health rather than waist size and weight. These are all true. This is very much true. But what the article failed to include, and this is nothing to do with Becky, obviously, because she was quoted in the article. This is the person who wrote the article. Only wanted to give a very brief outline, sort of like, oh, look, sort of fat people can be fit too. But that was it. There was nothing really spoken about how, like, actually for a lot of people, getting outside, overcoming isolation, improving mental health is really challenging. Not because of the individuals, but because of the society we live in. Becky talks about being denied surgery and how just because of BMI, and there's this bit about like how BMI is bullshit, and it's great. But then, of course, for every Becky and Scotty and all the other people who were in this article, there has to be an expert to provide the other side of the argument. Of course, there does. There was Dr. Jeffrey Horowitz, professor of movement science at Michigan School of Kinesiology, who says that exercise alone is not the solution to better health. Dude, I agree. Exercise is not a solution to health at all. In fact, I would say it was very low down when it comes to health in general, entire health and well-being. I would put exercise sort of, if we had a list and we put it in order, and there was, I would put it like, at least 15th on the list, right? There are loads more important things. So I'm with you, Dr. Jeffrey Horowitz. We're with each other so far. And then he went, I want to be cautious of the stigma associated with obesity. I said, thank you. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate you. I appreciate that you're concerned about stigma. He says weight loss is one of the most difficult things for people to do. I mean, I've had 3 babies, so I beg to differ. But sure, it is hard. I'll give you that. And I definitely tried to lose weight more than 3 times. And it's unsustainable, of course. So if you mean sustaining weight loss is one of the most difficult things to do, I would agree with you. Anyway, but goes on. We're with each other, and he goes, but for a person with obesity, oh, Jeffrey, did you have to? Who has some health risks associated with it? Losing weight almost always leads to the greatest health benefits. Exercise is probably second most important, followed by the type of foods they are eating. So in his mind, it's weight loss, exercise, food, 1, 2, 3. Of course, it's a load of shit. As I said, they're low down. Weight loss isn't even on there, and food and exercise much, much lower down. Much more important things that we'll talk about later. But anyway, Jeffrey, I think you might be a bit confused, but I'm not surprised because this is what you study, and you really don't know anything about anything else apart from exercise and movement. So, all right, fine. I hear you, and I ignore what you have to say. But listen here. You see how he said, but for a person who has some health risks. We're separating fat bodies now. I don't want to upset fat people, but for those who have health risks, I don't care. I will upset them. And there's Philippa Diedrichs, a professor of psychology. I have a feeling she's going to be nicer. At the Centre for Appearance Research at the University of the West of England in Bristol. She has mixed feelings about the term fat but fit. Tell us about it, Philippa. She says, I guess it's the but, because that highlights the negative connotations associated with being fat, whereas that is just a description and an adjective to describe a body shape. I agree. Fat is just a description. Couldn't have said it better myself. She goes on, but of course in society it has become laden with other negative connotations and stereotypes, which are often untruthful. They are. You're right, Philippa, thank you. There is a widespread misconception that those two things can't go together. In actual fact, there is a lot of evidence showing that you can be fat and fit. You see, she didn't like the but, she liked the and fit when it comes to strength, mobility, and cardiovascular health, and a range of other health indicators. But unfortunately, weight and health often get conflated. Oh, we were so close, Philippa. We really did. You could have made your point without talking about strength, mobility, and cardiovascular health. Because again, just like with the previous guy, Jeffrey, Dr. Horowitz, I do beg your pardon, it's very rude, Professor or Dr. Horowitz, both. wants to be very clear that, we shouldn't stigmatize fat people, but if you're fat and unhealthy, well, fucking do one. And Philippa's also, look, you can be fat and fit, but let me tell you about strength and mobility and cardiovascular health, because the assumption is, of course, these people who aren't strong and mobile and don't have good cardiovascular health, what is the assumption we're making about them? I mean, she didn't say anything, obviously. She wasn't saying anything negative, but it's the implication here, isn't it? Because we're separating them out. And that's the key. That this is the thing I want you to hear, is that we're creating a hierarchy within the fat community. Fat and fit, fat and exercising, fat and good nutrition, and fat and unhealthy, fat and diabetic, fat diabetic and not moving. It gets worse and worse and worse. That's the thing about hierarchies. And then there's Dr. Ellen Fellows, a GP and Vice President of the British Society of Lifestyle Medicine. This is not medicine, folks. Lifestyle medicine is not medicine. It's wellness culture. You just want to point that out. You can get a degree in medicine, like you can probably do some kind of degree in lifestyle medicine, but that's not an actual doctor. She's a doctor who went to medical school and became a doctor, and then decided to be a lifestyle medicine doctor, because there's a shit ton of money in that. So just pointing that out now. Dr. Ellen Fellows says it's a no-brainer that we should encourage people to exercise. Is it, Dr. Ellen Fellows? Everybody should be encouraged to. It's a no-brainer. I think perhaps you might need to do some critical analysis here. I think there's plenty of people that we shouldn't be encouraging to exercise. For example, people with an eating disorder who exercise as part of their eating disorder behavior, or I don't know, people with hypermobile EDS who have the risk of overextending their joints and causing major problems and needing joint replacements and stuff. So we can't say it's a no-brainer. But anyway, we'll move on. Fellows advises patients to keep active, but Fellows has a conscience. She says she feels awful when I meet people who are spending hours at the gym and not losing any weight, and they've not had any support to change what they are eating or addressing other factors such as sleep and stress. Just not just exercise, just eating, which Dr. Horowitz talked about, Professor Dr. Horowitz talked about, and was it Horowitz? Did I make that name up? No, it was Horowitz. I was right. There's eating and there's exercising, but Dr. Fellows wants you to remember about sleep and stress. Turn off your stress. Press the button. Reduce your stress. Dr. Fellows mentions a very important bit of research which shows that metabolically healthy, obese people had a 50% higher risk of coronary heart disease than those who are of normal weight. She goes on to say this, one of my favorite lies of all time. Fat around our hips and breasts is okay, but it is organ fat, central obesity, that gives us tummy fat. Organ fat gives us tummy fat. I'm curious to know how that is the case. Like, how did you just make that up and then just say it and hope that you sounded clever? It does not. Organ fat that gives us tummy fat, which acts as a hormone producing. So I'm not even going to read it out. Don't. Just shut up, Dr. Fellows. Rubbish. Lies, lies, more lies. There's somebody else in there called Rianne Cutter, and Rianne is one of the kind of fat but fit people. And she said, I have lost around 58 kilograms. My God. In the gym, we lift 50 kilogram sandbags. I don't know how I was walking around carrying that extra weight. No wonder my joints were hurting and I couldn't get up the stairs. We get into it, don't we? Now we get into it. Here's where the body hierarchies really just come to the surface. We're now just, before we were being a bit subtle about it. Now we're not bothering. Now we're just saying it out how it is. Because you see, Ryan is still a size 18, that's size 22 in the US. And so she wants to be smaller, but she's fat and fit, so she's all right. But before, when she weighs an extra 58 kilograms is I don't know how much that is in pounds. It's over 100, isn't it? Way over 100 pounds. Maybe close to 150 pounds. I don't know. You'd have to work that out. But like, it's a lot of weight that she's lost. She's a good fatty, isn't she? She's healthy. Strong, powerful, supple, fit. She gets to go to the top of the fatties. She's also a small fat, size 22, size 18. It's not really very fat, is she? There's only one part of this article that really shines through, and I'm like, oh, thank God someone says it. And Scotty says it. Scotty is a yoga instructor, among other things. And he says, he says, I often say at the end of my videos or classes, it's only running, it's only yoga. If it isn't your vibe, it isn't your vibe. I'm not here to determine that people need to exercise, that to be a good fat person is to be somebody that moves. Because I enjoy exercise, that doesn't make me a better fat person than somebody who doesn't. Thank you for saying that. It really doesn't. And I like that. I like that that quote is in there. I want to frame that quote, repeat it back to people because it doesn't. It doesn't make you a better fat person if you're exercising. But the reason I wanted to tell you about this article is I think it really, for me, highlights, it's so subtle, isn't it? It's the language, it's the coded language that we use. There's something in there about worthiness that we look to these people who have been selected, who are fat, and it's their job, or at least their part-time job, to be fitness instructors, right? So of course they exercise, it's their job. And I'm sure they'll be the first to tell you that. And Scotty even says that doesn't make me a better person. It's just that I exercise and I like doing it. And I'm making money out of it. That's great. That's a great thing. That's something to be proud of. And it's wonderful that we've got people of different shapes and sizes doing what was traditionally only for thin people. And also, this article kind of lays the groundwork for like this hierarchy of bodies. There are the ones who are fit and active, and then there are the ones that are metabolically unhealthy, poor mobility, poor cardiovascular health, all of the other things they said, not supple, and they are lower down. They are less than. They are not as good as. And for me, that's a real problem. I'm gonna move on now to the part of my podcast where I tell you how everything you've been told about weight loss is a lie. And I'm going to use the study that was quoted in this Guardian article. The study is metabolically healthy, obese, and incident cardiovascular disease events amongst 3.5 million men and women. People really need to work on their titles. I'm pretty sure ChatGPT could do a better job. Like if you're doing some research, just ask ChatGPT. Can I just make them a bit more interesting? No one wants to read that. Anyway, there's a large cohort study from, I don't know when it was from. Anyway, it was a large cohort study. I think it was published in 2017 that basically used electronic health records from the, and I shit you not, this is an abbreviation, this is an acronym, but it's the THIN database. That's the acronym, THIN. Can't make that up. They took 3.5 million people and they basically categorized, and all these, the only thing that the inclusion criteria is they couldn't have pre-existing heart disease. They didn't have any history of heart disease. And they categorized them according to their BMI, underweight, normal weight, overweight, obese. We all know how problematic that is, right? Those terms in them of themselves are terrible. BMI, completely useless metric of health, eugenics, racism, bullshit, yada yada. And we already know there's a problem. This study is already flawed, but we haven't got to the important parts yet. And so they then found they defined metabolically healthy by not having. So the absence of diabetes, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol. So if you didn't have those three things, you were metabolically healthy. And if you did, you were metabolically unhealthy. And that's it. And then they followed them up for about 5.5 years, roughly. And they were looking for cardiovascular events like a heart attack or stroke or heart failure, or anything like that. And so what did they find? They found that metabolically healthy fat people still had an increased risk of heart disease compared to metabolically healthy thin people. When they say it like it's a surprise, and they quote this study. Yeah, I mean, you're telling me that fat people have a higher risk of disease than thin people. I knew that. It's bloody obvious, isn't it? But not for the reasons you think, because the other thing they found was that the risks increased regardless of BMI. It was the diabetes, the high blood pressure, and the high cholesterol that increased your risk, not the weights. So even if you were a thin person who had one of these metabolic abnormalities, you had a higher risk. And so they're saying, there we go. Proof. It's not proof. It's not a gotcha moment. First of all, this is a really terrible study. I cannot believe it got into the Journal of Cardiology. But beyond that, it's an observational study. which means we cannot establish causation. Folks, whenever you're looking at studies, whenever you hear about a study, you want to ask yourself, what kind of study was it? And is it a good quality study? A randomized control study is, I guess, in terms of collecting data and drawing conclusions, is perhaps the most accurate and the least biased of them all. And a meta-analysis, but the meta-analysis is only as good as the study that includes. So a meta-analysis of randomized control studies, top randomized control study, and then you have, like, good quality observational studies, so case control studies, prospective studies rather than retrospective studies. And like, we can determine whether or not they're good or not. This wasn't any of those things. It was literally, this is the kind of study that a teenager could do with access to the right data. Like, it's just not difficult, right? 4 categories of people, follow them up, and how many people had a heart attack. It wasn't difficult. You cannot establish causation from an observational study. Why? Because there are all sorts of reasons why fat people who are quote unquote metabolically healthy are more likely to have a heart attack. Epigenetics, genetics, early life experiences, stress, environmental exposures, difference in healthcare access, difference in quality of care, difference in socioeconomic status, psychological stress, weight, stigma, weight, cycling, discrimination. All of these things could be the reason why fat people are more likely to have a heart attack. And we don't know, because we didn't look at it. So it's not a gotcha moment. It leaves more questions than it answers. But beyond that, what the hell? How are you determining metabolically healthy by just 3 criteria? Diabetes, hypertension, and hyperlipidemia. Why are those 3? Why'd you pick those ones? Why not do other ones? Like, what? Is it that you didn't have the data? Are you missing other things? Like, what if there's another condition that links all of these together? Like, it's just ludicrous that those are the only thing they can come up with. Also, they're using electronic health records, which is really problematic because they are often inaccurate. They also only assessed the person's metabolic health at baseline, didn't even follow them up every 6 months or something, nothing, just looked at the data. I mean, this is such a basic bitch of a study. Like, it's ludicrous. But that's the study that was quoted by Dr. Ellen Fallows, and it's the study that was quoted in The Guardian, science. Bullshit. It's a crap study. Shame on you for thinking that that's an actual study to be proud of. It says nothing. All it says is that amongst this group of 3.5 million men and women, fat people were more likely to have a heart attack than thin people. Fat people without diabetes, high blood pressure, or high cholesterol were more likely to have a heart attack than thin people without high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and whatever diabetes. So what? I've already told you. I've listed a whole bunch of reasons why that might be. And unsurprisingly, most of them, if not all of them, have their roots in capitalism and racism and ableism and classism. White supremacy. Shocker. Could it be? My final part of this podcast is the part of the podcast where you get to ask me anything. And today's question comes from somebody on Instagram who asked the question, how can a person improve his health without going into weight loss? And then made some suggestions: good nutrition, gentle movement, social relationships, good sleep, etc., etc. I said, I don't want to be passive with my health, even though I know that I cannot control it in the end. And this, for me, is the crux of it. This, for me, sums up the podcast perfectly, sums up the statement. Your health does not determine your worth. Because here's the thing, if health does determine your worth, then it makes sense that you'd want to improve your health. And I think of it from like a carrot and a stick point of view. From a carrot point of view, why wouldn't you want to improve your health? If health is related to worth, then people with, with better, quote unquote, better health are considered more worthy, therefore more employable, more likely to make friends, more likely to get into relationships, more likely to have support and access to resources, and, do better on a social media algorithm, and yada, yada, yada. There's so many reasons why, if health and worthiness are linked together, why you'd want to sort of act on your health, why you'd want to, what's this person say? Not be passive. They want to be active when it comes to their health. But there's also the stick, the other side of the coin. Because if my health and my worth, not just my self-worth, but my worth, my value within society are linked together, again, I have to be active. Otherwise, I'm at risk. Now we're talking about threats, threat to my safety and security, to my financial stability, to, we're talking about social isolation, we're talking about healthcare access, we're talking about really important things. If I want to be safe, I need to take action when it comes to my health. And the problem is, there are very few things we can do to control our health. I've talked about this already. We can't control our health. We have so little control over it. So do you get it now? Do you get why this is so important? Because if the only way for me to increase my value in society, or another way of looking at it, for me to be considered less worth less. No, that's not the word I'm looking for. If I want to be worth more as opposed to worth less, then I need to be an active participant in my health. And yet, there's very little I can do. So it's no wonder we spend all our money on health and wellness culture. It's no wonder we're always looking for the next, the next hack, the next thing, the next food or whatever, or supplement or this or that. Like, there's no wonder people ask me all the time, what can I do? How can I improve my health without going into weight loss? They ask me this all the time. Of course you're asking that question. Why wouldn't you? You want to be worth more, not worth less. But here's the other thing. Here's the other option. What if we were to turn around collectively and individually and say, fuck you, my health has nothing to do with my value, with my worth, with what I am, who I am, and who I am to other people? What if we were to turn around and say, this healthism is bullshit and I'm not doing this anymore? I'm just not, I'm just, I'm not prepared to live in a world where you're going to judge me by my health. And, it's wishful thinking sometimes. It's not going to impact whether or not you get treated better in the doctor's office. If you're fat and you're unhealthy, you're never going to be treated well by a doctor. You need to come to terms with that. Acceptable, maybe. One of my clients is brilliant. So, didn't cause me harm gets you to a certain point on the scale. Actively try to help me gets you above acceptable. So if acceptable, if like C minus, like just about passing, in order to get to that level, you have to have at least attempted to help me. Very few doctors will ever get to that stage. A lot of doctors will be like, I want to help you, but I can't. And my hands are tied. I can't even do that. So they don't make it past the C minus. And most doctors are in the actively doing harm part. So they're like failing F. That's the reality, isn't it? When was the last time a fat, unhealthy person had a good consultation? And by good, to get to like a B plus, not only does your doctor have to sort of work in your best interest, but they have to achieve something. Yes, and not only do I care about your health, I'm going to do something positive for your health. I guess to be like in an A, to get to sort of the A level, you have to actually go above and beyond. And okay, fine, above and beyond, it's asking a lot, but just a pass would be to do something, just something that was actually in my best interest. When was the last time that happened? The last time it happened to me, I can't remember. No, somebody gave me an injection, a steroid injection into my shoulder. That was a C minus. Didn't talk about my weight either, so maybe even a B minus. Folks, I'm going to leave it at that. I hope you got something out of that. I welcome your thoughts. And if you have something that you want to ask me for next episode, then please do ask me anything. You can check the show notes. You can send me an email, or you can send me a message on social media, or find a way of getting in touch with me and asking me a question, and then I will try and answer it. I should probably have a list of things that are happening right now at the moment, things to look forward to. I have no idea what they are. So yeah, if you're not signed up for my emails, remember you're only getting one email a week, well, 2 if you count the No Way newsletter. So the No Way newsletter, and there's 1 email a week from me now. So if you are signed up, you'll be getting less, but you'll still be in touch with what's going on, because I'm not organised enough to remember to say it at the end of the podcast episode. Thank you so much to everyone who's listening. I will see you next time.